suffering can cause us to demand an explanation from God. That's the danger. That's what was going on with Job. So shaking our fist at God is like, answer for yourself. Anybody ever been there before? Hey, God, I'm talking to you. What is wrong with you? Give me your answer for why I'm going through this in my life. That's what Job was doing. Explain yourself. Why are you allowing this? He was demanding that God give him, a lowly human being. God, you owe me an answer as to why I'm going through this. But then the tide changes, and verse by verse, it's really cool. You got to go back and read it. For 4 chapters, God unleashes on Job some course correction for his attitude. You ever getting a course correction from God, right? The one he gave me in the NICU was very gentle, but the one that God gives Job is powerful. I'm going to read a bunch of verses, rapid fire, so you can listen to the personality of God. It says this, Job 38. Then the Lord answered Job from a whirlwind, who is it that questions my wisdom with such ignorant words? And then I love this verse, brace yourself like a man, because I have some questions for you, and you must answer them. If God says to you, brace yourself like a man, I think I might poop my pants, okay? So God says, Joe, brace yourself like a man. I got a couple. You've been railing off at me. All your questions, demanding me to give you an answer. Tell me this. And for 4 straight chapters, God rails. He just unleashes. Look at what he says. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you know so much. Who determined the dimensions and stretched out the surveying line? Who supports the foundations? Who laid the cornerstone as the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? Who kept the sea inside its boundaries as it burst forth from the womb? As I closed it with clouds and wrapped it in the darkness, for I locked it behind barred gates, limiting its shores. I said, this far and no further will you come. Here your proud waves must stop. Have you ever commanded the morning to appear, caused the dawn to rise in the east? Have you made daylight spread to the ends of the earth to bring an end to the night's wickedness? As the light approaches, the earth takes shape like clay. Pressed beneath a seal, it is robed in brilliant colors. The light disturbs the wicked and stops the arm that's raised in violence. Have you explored the springs from which the seas come? Have you explored their depths? Do you know where the gates of death are located? Have you seen the gates of utter gloom? Do you realize the extent of the earth? Tell me about it if you know. Don't you love when it's recorded that God talks like that? Go ahead, you're so smart. Tell me about it. Where does the light come from? Where does the darkness go? Can you take each of it to its home? Do you know how it gets there? But of course you know all this, for you were born before it was all created, and you are so very experienced. That is one part of 4 chapters. Several times God says, hey, Job, let me remind you, brace yourself like a man, because I'm about to ask you some questions that you can't answer. Man, God allowed Job, and that to me is the mercy of God, because God allowed Job to shake his fist. God allowed Job to be arrogant. God could have struck Job dead the first time he shook his fist. He said, you want to do that to me? You want to talk to me like that? I'm going to show you and everybody else who I am. After it was all said and done, guys, 4 chapters of God reminding him, it tells us that Job responded by repenting and reaffirming his trust in God. He repented and he said, God, you're right? The truth is, the book of Job never answers the question, why do people suffer? You can read it from cover to cover. God doesn't give him an answer why people suffer. Instead, it shows us the answer to the question, how do we maintain our faith when we go through suffering? That's actually the purpose of the book of Job. Not so much about why it happens, but how. For Job, it was honest, heartfelt discussion with God followed by repentance and a renewed commitment to God, to serving God, because he is all-knowing, right? And we only see the world from our perspective, from our suffering. And that brings me to the main point of this message, right? This is not about knowing the right thing to say when someone is struggling. It's not about knowing which reason is the cause or why am I going through this. It's this. It's your last fill-in. Will you trust God without knowing the reason for your suffering? Everybody get it? I know we come a far way from like everything happens for a reason. But it's not what you think it is when we just give that answer to people. Will you trust God? Paul said it in Romans 8:28. This isn't the first time we're quoting this verse in the series. And we know that God causes everything what? To work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. And the most important part of that verse is the phrase, God uses everything.